Hello, friends. Hello, readers. Hello, people of the internet. I am coming at you live with this is not live with a January reading wrap up. And I actually hate my hair right now, so give me 1 second. This is better. Actually, I haven't worn this hat in a long time. I need to bring it out, and it has Rick and Morty on it. If you can't tell, I've never seen the show. That's a lie. I've seen 2 episodes of it that my cousins showed me because they're a bad influence. Hey everyone, how are y'all doing? It's February. It is the month of love. January, unfortunately, was not. And it shows in my reads as well. All right, let's get into it, shall we? Let me pull up my Goodreads. Does everyone love the back of my computer? She's so fun and festive, and I love her. Also, so I have to read for a class. This is kind of a spoiler, but I have to read for one of my classes the book The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, and I bought this copy off of Goodreads, right? I was like, "Oh my god, it's $3. Let me buy it." Cuz Goodreads is very iffy. Like, they'll say something is like really bad and like not good quality. Like a book is not good quality, but it's perfectly fine when you buy it. And so I was like kind of expecting the same thing. Look what happened to the cover today. The cover got ripped off. And like look at the back. It's like disintegrating at the seams. So I'm going to go buy another copy of it this weekend. I also made a matcha. I haven't made a matcha since last year. And I kind of want to get the strawberry Power Core like protein milk and do a strawberry matcha because I feel like that would be so good. I've seen it on the social medias. Anyway, let's get into it, shall we? January was a really good reading month at the beginning of the month, but then it died when I came to school, unfortunately. Okay, so the first book that I read, continuation of what I've been doing for the past how many months have I been rereading the Sarah J. Maas started last series. I'm gonna say this is probably month 3. I still haven't finished the series, but I did finish the 5th and 6th book, which were the first 2 reads of the year. Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn. I did do the tandem read, but I listened to the audiobook. I did not read the physical books, and I'm kind of sad about it. I wish I'd actually read the books because like this is such a good series that I would love to read, and I feel like I cheated it, honestly, with the audiobooking. Those are my first 2 reads. Empire of Storm, 5-star, Tower of Dawn, 3.75 stars. Now everyone, I need y'all to buckle your seatbelts in because this was a month for Miss Olive Blake. Miss Olive Blake is an author who writes a lot of fantasy series. That's like her thing, is fantasy series. And I read 4 Olive Blake books this month. First one I read is Alone with You in the Ether. Ladies and gentlemen, 5 stars. I'm going to consider this the first 5-star of the year because I hadn't read the book before, and I've read Empire of Storms before, so this is technically the first 5-star of the year. This book, let me tell you something. Basically, it follows these 2 main characters. We have Reagan is our female main character, and we have Aldo, which is our male main character. And both of these people are really bad communicators, but they are very smart people. And they get into this relationship, right? Reagan is just kind of depressed, but she has a lot of money and she works at an art institute and she just gives tours every day for different art pieces. And Aldo works at a university. He's a professor, but he's like a grad student who's a professor. But he doesn't really want to be a professor. He just loves math. The entire novel, he's trying to figure out time travel and he's doing the numbers, like the multiplication math problems in his head. The entire book, which basically sums up his character. Anyway, they end up meeting each other, and their conversation that they had was so like compelling that they wanted to continue to speak to each other. Reagan is in a relationship, but they want to continue these conversations, so they gave themselves 6 conversations to get to know each other, get to know the other person. They said that I feel like I could get to know you in 6 conversations. And so they do that. For 6 conversations, they get to know each other. This book, it's stunning. The writing of this novel is absolutely heartbreaking. Cried while reading this book. Actually, I ate it up. I was obsessed with these 2, and I loved just the way she writes, the way Olive Blake writes is so phenomenal. I would highly, highly, highly recommend this book. Such a good book. I need to find my Kindle so I can read some quotes. Hold on. my bed the entire time. It was literally in my bed the entire time. I'm actually so mad. I've been looking for this for the past like couple days. I just realized I did all of that and didn't even speak into the mother freaking microphone. Oh, okay. Here are some of my faves. Whatever you are made of, blank, I am made of it too. What is that quote from? Whatever our souls are made of, you and mine are the same. What is that from? It's from a movie. I'll remember in a second. Every time you love, pieces of you break off and get replaced by something you steal from someone else. But the body cannot come back, it cannot rebuild itself, it cannot suffer a loss and become what it was before. No, it doesn't work that way. Normal is a nice word for boring. She did that. She loved him invasively, exploring him like the depths of the sea. He measured time based off the time they have spent and the time they will spend together. Thank you for the shape you took in my life, but it's over now. It doesn't fit. The Babylonians were wrong. Time is made of her. She said it so sweetly he almost thanked her. There's nothing worse than being predictable, nothing smaller than feeling ordinary. You are brilliant. Tell your mind to be kind to you today. I don't know what it is, but the way that she writes, the way that Olivia Blake writes just speaks to me, speaks to my soul, speaks to my person, and it makes so much sense. And I wish I could speak like her, and I wish I could be as eloquent as her. It's a love story between them, and they are so smart and sophisticated, and just the way that they think, I just like. I personally would not want to date either of them. Well, maybe Reagan's a little messy, but Aldo is very sweet and he's very kind. Okay, so Alone with You in the Ether, 5 stars. Please read that book because I will need to talk to somebody about it. Next book I read was another Olivia Blake book, which was The Atlas Six. I have already read The Atlas Six. I read it in like 2021 and I rated it 4.5 stars. This book is about this group of 6 people are brought together to study at this library for a year. It's a secret society. They are learning how to use their magic. They all have different types of magics. One is a telepath, one can persuade your emotions, one guy can walk through time, another guy can see through illusions. It's just they're all different forms of magic and they're brought together to come and help protect this library. And for a year they study in this library, use the library to become stronger Medians, is what the people are called if they have magic. And at the end of the year, something happens. The first time I read this book, I was 18 years old, and it was confusing. I was confused by this book. I did not understand what was happening, and I did my best to follow, but I was lost. The second time I've read this book, it made a lot more sense, and I listened to the audiobook. That also helped a lot. It made a lot more sense, and I understood what was actually going on, and it was good. I gave it 4.5 stars, like I said. Then I went immediately into the second book because I had forgotten what happened at the ending of the first book. And then I was like, oh my god, I need to know what happens. So the second book is just continuation of them and what they're doing and yada yada yada. The second book I gave 4 stars to. I have the third book. I'm trying to get it from my library. I have to wait my turn because about 45 million other people want to read the third book too. But I read that one and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I gave that one 4 stars. And I would recommend that series. It's very high fantasy. A lot of it doesn't make sense because they're really talking about physics a lot of the time. And I was like clocking out at that part. Atlas 6. I'm waiting for the last one to be loaned to me from my library. And then I'm going to read it. And then I'm going to tell you what I think. The next book I read, the 6th book that I read in January, is called Heartless Hunter, aka The Crimson Moth. This series pretty much is about a witch. January was a month for fantasy. It's about a witch, and she lives in this society where witches are hunted. She gets involved with the main leader of the guard, but nobody knows that she's a witch and that she is helping other witches escape their society. So she gets involved with Bro and a bunch of stuff happens and it was really entertaining. It was actually so fun and I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. I highly recommend this book. It was so fun and the second one comes out this year and I will be reading it because the ending was like really kooky and wacky and I kind of knew what was going to happen, but I didn't know exactly what was going to happen because I thought it was just going to be one book, but it's not. It's multiple books. Yeah, I would recommend this book, Heartless Hunter. It was so good, so tea. And then I read One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. Right. This one was actually tea. This book, I was like, it had me going all over the place. I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? There were so many plot twists. Let me tell you what the story is about, what the book is about. Let me tell you what the book is about. There are these two rival witch families. Think Romeo and Juliet, but with drugs and witches. You know what I'm saying? So we have this one family that are all boys. Losers. I think they're called the Fedorovs. It starts with an F. They're all Russian, by the way. This man whose name is starts with a K, but it means like death killer or something like that. I don't know. He's their father, and then he has three boys. And then there is the Matrova something something, and it's this woman her name is Baba Yaga. If you have read the Throne of Glass series, you know exactly who Baba Yaga is in that series, which is crazy, by the way, that there's two Baba Yagas. She has 6 daughters, right? Crazy. And both families are involved in the drug business, are so invested in making a bunch of money, and then you know what happens with Romeo and Juliet. Just put that into this story. Their families just get involved with each other, and like people are falling in love, people are killing each other, some people are getting involved with other people outside of their like humans get involved, and these fae get involved. This book was so good, and it had me crying. I was crying when I was reading it. My review, it said it was a 4.5 stars. I said Olive E. Blake does not miss. She doesn't miss. She's coming out with another book this year, and I'm so excited to read it because it's called Gifted and Talented. The cover looks so presumptuous. I have to read it. I have to absolutely read it, and I'm gonna put the cover right here. I love Olive E. Blake. I love them. I love how she writes. I think it's so entertaining and it's so smart. Let me see if I have one for my enemy quotes on here. Unfortunately, I do not. This book was so good too, and I was like eating it up. But I love the characters in it, and it was just such an interesting story with like power dynamics and how these people were always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Such a good story. One for my enemy, Olive Blake. Please read it. Then I read If He Hollers, Let Him Go. I read this for my African American lit class. So it's about this guy whose name is Bob Jones. He is a black man that works in the shipping yards in the 40s, mid 40s. And it follows Bob working his job and living his life in a span of 5 days. To put it bluntly, Bob is a crash out. Bob is a crash out. I just want to go ahead and put some like trigger warnings before reading this book. Like there's racial slurs, there's violence against women, there is sexual assault, there is like it's so icky, bro. It's so icky, and I felt like I needed to take a shower after I finished this book. But I feel like it's an important book to read. I personally did not rate this book because I felt as if I couldn't rate it correctly because like, when you read it, it makes you feel bad, but it's important to get perspective. So anyway, Bob is living his life, doing his thing, and during this time in history, it was when like right after Pearl Harbor. So during that time, if anyone didn't know this, because I didn't know this, during that time in history, the president at the time, which I think was FDR, but it was during the time of World War II, all of the Asian Americans that were living in California had to be relocated to these like camps. They weren't concentration camps, but they were concentration camps without the physical violence. It was these like concrete buildings and like these prisons sort of that all of these Asian Americans had to move into, even though they'd been living there for years, because all the white people in America were afraid that they were involved with Japan in the war. So anyway, they all got kicked out of California, specifically Los Angeles, and all of these abandoned homes is where a bunch of black families move into. That is where Bob lives. At this time, they were trying to integrate like blacks and whites together. So that's what he's doing. He's working with all of these different white people as well as Hispanic people at the shipyard. He's a foreman, so he's in a position of power and he has people that follow him and stuff like that. But Bob, like the way he treats women is actually so bad, and the way he talks about them is so bad. But something we talked about in our class is the reason he treats women so badly is because he personally feels that he does not have any power in America at that time, which is a completely valid statement. So he takes his anger out and his lack of power onto people he can have power over, which is women. So I recommend reading this book and either listening to someone talk to you about it, like a professor talk about it, so they can like further analyze, because I feel like that would make the reading experience a lot better. It is a hard read, But like I said, it's an important read and it gives some perspective in that time. If He Hollers, Let Him Go by Chester Himes. The next book I read and final book I read in January is Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. I gave this book 4 stars. This book also made me very sad. I need to read books that make me a little bit happier because I feel like I've been reading just sad books all this month. Four Winds by Kristen Hanna is about this family that lives in Texas, and it's basically following this mom and her kids and her husband and his parents, that they all lived together during like the Dust Bowl time. And a lot of what was happening then is that families that were living in Texas and Oklahoma and Alabama, they were getting swept away in these dust bowls. Like the sand was just covering all of their crops, and so they couldn't grow anything, and people were losing their jobs because it was the Great Depression. So they would go move to California because California was supposedly the land of milk and honey, because there was a bunch of jobs, there's a bunch of cotton fields, so people would go pick cotton, people would go pick fruit in the spring. It basically just follows the story of this family, of this woman and her children, and what she has to go through and the stuff she has to deal with in this time, being a woman and not having the respect of her peers, and also being a woman and trying to protect her family. Do you know what I'm saying? I gave that one 4 stars. I liked it a lot, and I'm gonna continue reading Miss Kristen Hanna's stuff. Yeah, those are all the books that I read this month. We read, let me count. I read 6 fantasy books, I guess 1 fiction book, and 2 historical fiction books. So yeah, it was a good month. Good reading month. I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to continue reading this month. That's all for me. That's all I have to say, actually. So I'm going to shut my mouth. Gonna go do my homework because I have so much of that to do. And I love you all so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful day and are living, laughing, loving your life. Okay, kisses from me. Bye.